All right. For the next part of the lecture, we are going to focus on making a figure that has multiple subplots within it. So now we have to modify this a bit. The first thing that we have to do is create a figure because we need to create kind of a canvas in order to hold the different plots. And so the first thing we do is use this figure method. And so this figure method gives it a kind of a name in order to call the figure if you want to, and then we can also specify the figure size. So initially we created a 5 by 5 inch figure. All right, so we are going to create a figure that has 4 different parts to it. So one of the ways that we can do this is by using this subplot. And so what subplot does is it breaks up the figure into 4 different pieces. Actually, it breaks it up into however many pieces you want it to. So you can create a grid, and the first 2 numbers specify the grid. So if you wanted a 2 by 2, you would use 2 and 2. If you wanted a 1 by 4, you use it like I did it. Maybe you only want 3 different points, so you do a 1 by 3. Maybe you want 8, so you do something like 4 by 2. So the idea is that you break up the plot into individually sized subplots. And so here I've specified it's a 1 by 4. And so now we also specify which one of the 4 we want to look at. So we're gonna put 4 different figures on this figure, 4 different subplots on this figure. So you notice we run the subplot command 4 different times. The grid is the same each time, but that last number specifies what we want to plot on. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste all of these into a single run these all together, starting from the last one, and now we can simply show it. So the result, the output, is equal to this. And so you'll notice that we have broken up this figure into 4 independent subplots, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then this follows the grid size 1 row and then 4 different columns, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first one we plot a line, using the first sinusoid data, and then we gave it a X label as well. Now we move to the next one. And so instead of using plot, we use this other command called fill. So the fill is a modified type of graph. So instead of creating a line, it creates this fill, which I think is obvious why it's called a fill. And then we give it an X label, which is shown here. The third one, we just do a simple, we just plot this again. We don't add any label. And then the fourth one, we plot it one more time. And then again, we add this X label. So here you can see how we've taken this figure and we've added 4 different plots within it. All right, so now let's continue. So let's use this right here. So we're going to run this all together. And so now we create figures that look like this. So when we ran the subplot, we specified our grid. We wanted our grid to be a 2 by 1, so we wanted 2 rows and 1 column, so this looks right. And then we graphed on the first one and then the second one. So now we're using error bars. So this is another type of function that creates plots with error bars on it. So we again supply it with the X and the Y data, but now we add this optional data called Y error. So this is how we can create error bars. And so we just used numpy multiplication in order to multiply the values to get together in order to get the size of the error bars. So you can see we have this line like normal, but then we also have these Y error bars that are plotted on it, and each data point has its own specific value for the size of that. So basically what we need this array to have the same size as this and this. And then on the second one, again, we use an error bar in order to create the line, but instead of specifying Y error bars, we specify X error bars. And in this case, we just give it a single value. So the Y error is 0.05. The X error is equal to 0.05, and then the Y error is equal to 0.05. So in this way, you can kind of see that we have a line that has both X and Y error bars on it, although it does get kind of hard to see. All right, so now we will make a another one final graph. All right. So here we created a new figure. We specified our grid size as 1 by 3, so 1 row and 3 different columns. The first one, we create a histogram. So we take this this data, the Y data, and we use this in order to create a histogram. And so we can specify how many bins we want. Bins is equal to 5. We can also specify how alpha is basically whether or not you can see through it. It's a transparency. So this helps us see kind of the data, although it doesn't work too well here. We can see that. We can see kind of multiple things right here. So, and then we specify we wanted to normalize it. So all of these allow us to create a histogram. So histograms might be pretty useful for you. So you might find this, this histogram method useful for creating these histogram type objects. Here on the second subplot, we created a bar. So again, the data you can see here is what we used in order to create the bar. This bar plot also allows us to specify the Y air, and so we use that in order to create these air bars. And then finally, we specify the color of this as well. So the color of this is either red or black. So this is an example of a bar plot. We added a title, we added a Y label, and then we also added X ticks as well. So first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So this is all the same as before. And then the last thing we created was a pie plot. So I know that to create a pie plot, use this pie method. So I provided it the data. So this data was up here. So these are the 7 values of the pie plot. The labels are fresh, soft, junior, senior, master's, PhD, and professor. So this might be a way, the number of students in a classroom or something like that. So there might be 33 freshmen in a class, 24 sophomores, and if we wanted to display this as a pie plot, we can just send this data to there. So this is the data. Which is used to create the pie plot. The labels was just a list of strings, and then you can also use this explode attribute argument if you want to kind of move some of these out from their normal place. And then we added a title. In this case, we added what's called a B box to it. So this is why it's surrounded by a square and in a different color, etc. So, and then a super title right here. And so kind of using this, we were able to create this figure that contains 3 subplots, and each subplot is kind of its own custom plot. So this is kind of the basics of matplotlib. So you have to know the name of the plot that you want to make. So all of the different types of plots that you want to make typically have different names. So we've seen histogram, we've seen plot, we've seen pie, we've seen bar, and there's lots of them that we haven't covered before. So kind of the way it works is that if you know what kind of plot you want to make, usually you search for it with matplotlib, and then you can find the function that will do what you want to do. So let's say we wanted to do matplotlib heat map. So typically you want to have some sort of Google search that will allow you to find the function. And so in order to create a color map, a 2D heat map using matplotlib, typically use this function called imshow, and then you can find out and try to figure out how to use it. All right, so lecture is pretty short, but the examples will be rather long, so I think you'll probably need to spend a lot of time working on this, but practice is kind of the only way to get used to it.